Yerusha brothers. Yerusha brothers, and the unique relationship. We spoke about why there are Havaminas, how there could be Havaminas of brothers, Yarshanik, even before a father. It's a pretty amazing Havamina. How brothers could even be first on the list before a son. Now, how is that possible? Right? We saw that it doesn't just go through the father. If it goes through the father, then what's there to talk about? We spoke about the Gemara on Kufna Test, which we'll have to get back to. There was a suffix about whether there was a unique relationship between the grandson and the grandfather versus the uncle. And we saw that the Sefer HaTrumos even had a suffix that maybe it applies only to the grandfather, not to the uncle. But the question is, if it always goes to the grandfather anyway, so then why should, how could that work? How could he have a suffix about that? So then we saw maybe the answer started with that Ramban. The Ramban that tells us 3 different days why it doesn't say Av in the Torah. And we suggested that the Ramban says one point, and we suggested something exactly the opposite. The Ramban says, number one, once it says son from father, so that means father from son too, right? It's 2-directional. Once you have primary relatives, it goes in 2 directions. So it's Ki'ilu, it says father. But then the second daya is the key for what it says, and it contrasts the other dayas. The Ramban tells us that Yerusha only goes up down. Yerusha doesn't go across. That's the yesod of the second daya of the Ramban. Yerusha can't go across. Let's study it. It only goes up down. Yotze chalatza. It goes to descendants and ancestors. It doesn't go to co-generationists, if that's a word. Right? It only goes ancestors and descendants. It doesn't go across. And therefore, if it says brothers, then it must have father too. But that's a crucial line in the Ramban about brothers. But the Ramban says mishmush. That's how brothers get it. It's only through mishmush. So the first day of the Ramban might say exactly the opposite. It's not through mishmush. And maybe that's why it doesn't say father, because if it would have said father, maybe I would have thought mishmush. The opposite of the second day. The second day says it doesn't say father because it's obvious. Maybe the first day would hold that no, it's not so obvious. I would have said that maybe if it would have said father, I would have thought mishmush. Kamashmal or not. And that was the different days of the Ramban. That was the 2 days of the Meiri that we saw. And these were the Havaminas and the Maskanas of Baalei HaTosfos. We left off, though, with the sheet of the Rambam. How do we explain the Rambam, who seems to have both elements? We saw the first 4 Rambams, 3 or 4 Rambams, seem to say that it is direct. It is direct. It is not through mishmush, right? We saw the first Rabbi Akiva Eiger's Rambam. Rabbi Eiger's Rambam, who says that the din of Ro'i Liyarsha, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Ro'i Liyarsha only applies to direct relatives. Sons, what does he say? Sons, daughters, and brothers. Says Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he thinks that's a raya mochrachas, that it's direct. That's his assumption. The Rambam must hold direct. 2 brothers. The Chazon Ish said it's the Rambam in Hilchos Rotzeach that tells us, because a brother is roy to be a Gol Adam. A Gol Adam is only by Roy Liyarsha. That's his Rambam. But there's another Rambam which we're not going to do right now, but the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos seems to say exactly the opposite. As we we'll talk about it. But the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos seems to say hold the mishmush, like we saw the Sifri at the beginning of the with my Gemara. At the beginning of the Sugya, the Rambam says beferish. I hope you saw that Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos. The Rambam goes through the whole, right? If Amram dies, he goes through the whole family tree. It goes to Moshe, it goes to Aaron, and if they have no kids, it goes to his father. And the Rambam's lashon there is beferish. It's going to go to Amram's brothers because they are the Yorshim of Kahas. That's what the Rambam says. It's going to go to Chevron and Uziel because they are the Yorshim of Kahas. That's beferish. The brothers get it through mishmush, says the Rambam. And if that was the only one, then maybe we could say, okay, with Pirush Mishnayos, maybe he was Chozerbo when he came to write Mishnah Torah. But we saw even in the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam seems to say that it goes through the father, right? And that was the other Rambam in Perek Beis Halacha Zayin, Hilchos Nachlos, where the Rambam says that if there are descendants of a Bechor, right? Levi dies. Reuven and Shimon get his property, and Reuven gets a double portion. Double portion from Levi But Reuven's Levi's brother, not his firstborn. How is that possible? Unless you say it has something to do with the father too. Because he's the Bechor of the father. If you don't say that, it's a very difficult Rambam. But that Rambam seems to be clearly holding that it goes through the father, mishmush. So the question is, how do we put all of these Rambams together? So maybe there is a slightly modified idea. We've had two different approaches up till now, right? We've had brothers get it direct, ashar, one to brother, or mishmush. It goes from the brother to the father down to the next brother, right? That's what we have said. Meaning if the father died already. Reuven and Shimon. Reuven dies, his brother's going to yarshit him. Why? Yaakov's already dead. It's Ki'ilu, it goes through Yaakov, and then comes back down to Shimon. Maybe there's another way of looking at mishmush. Maybe there's another way of looking at mishmush. When I saw this, I was very excited because it's somewhat of a modified middle approach. Let's ask a couple of other questions first on the whole concept of mishmush, the whole concept of going through. Let's remember the Gemara. Let's go back, if you can, open up the Gemara back on where we started. Kuf Nun Tes. Gemara back on Kuf Nun Tes Amud Aleph. Right, so remember what the Gemara said? The Gemara said, let's get to the lines again. Yaakov, Reuven, and Chanoch. Yaakov, Reuven, and Chanoch. Maybe you're with me early in the morning there, right? Yaakov, Reuven, and Chanoch. So what happens? Reuven sells property before Yaakov dies. He's not allowed to do that. It's not his yet. And then Reuven dies. When Yaakov dies, Chanoch could say, well, I'm taking the stuff back. What do you mean? Your father sold it. No. I'm here b'makom my grandfather, not b'makom my father. So the Gemara says that a grandson gets straight from a grandfather. Makom avia av ta'asina. Two simple questions. Fascinating. So we're saying that grandchildren get it from grandparents. Think about this case. Reuven and Shimon. Reuven dies, he leaves over a daughter. Again, Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven dies, he leaves over a daughter. Now Yaakov dies. So who's going to yarshin? What happens to the Yerusha? Yaakov has two sons, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven predeceases his father. So Reuven leaves a daughter, and then there's Shimon. What happens with Yaakov's Yerusha? Somebody tell me. What's the halacha?
The granddaughter would get a double portion, a single portion.
What? Yaakov? Yeah.
The granddaughter would get a double portion while
the granddaughter would get a double portion. Right. Portion. The granddaughter would get a double portion, meaning the granddaughter takes b'makom her father and she splits it with her uncle, Shimon. 1 second. If we really take it literally, that grandchildren get straight from grandparents, so it's basically Reuven's daughter is getting straight from Yaakov. 1 second. She's a girl. Shimon should get everything. If we literally say that grandchildren, like what the Gemara says, so then if Reuven has a daughter and Shimon is there, so it should be Ki'ilu, there's a girl and there's a boy, and then she should get nothing. We know that's not true. How do you answer that question? Again, there's a son and there's a granddaughter. So if the granddaughter is like a daughter, because it's getting straight from the grandfather, take that literally, if the grandchildren get straight from the grandparent, and you should say it's like a son and a daughter. Or I'll ask you another question. Another question, if it goes straight. Let's say there are two brothers. I'll wait for you to write. Right, two brothers. Let's say Reuven and Shimon. Reuven has one son. Shimon has 10 sons. Reuven and Shimon both predeceased their father Yaakov. And Reuven has a son. Shimon has 10 sons. How do we split up that Yerusha when Yaakov dies? What's the halacha? How do you split that up between Reuven and Reuven's son and Shimon's 10 sons. Somebody help me out. How do you split that up?
Shimon's sons should have to split Shimon's portion.
What happened? Good. The 10 sons split. I mean, he split it two ways. Reuven gets a portion, and Shimon's 10 sons get one portion. And they have to split it up equally. Reuven's one son gets 50% of the assets, and Shimon's 10 sons get 50% of the assets. But 1 second. If we say that grandsons are b'makom avua da'aba, right? They go straight from the grandfather, and they're all like sons. They should split it 11 different ways. If we take it literally, again, if we take literally that line of the grandson gets straight from the grandfather, and the grandson is like a son, right? You skip over the father. So he has one son and he has 11 sons. It should be they all get equally. Hold on 1 second. Both of those questions seem to say, again, if you take it literally, that the grandchild gets from the grandson, the grandchild gets from the grandfather, you have these kashas. The granddaughter should be like a girl b'makom banim, she should get nothing. And then the one grandson and the 10 grandsons, they should split it equally. And you know that's not true. So we need to reformulate. We need to figure this out a little bit more. And one other question. I don't know if you went further in that Gemara. Let's learn the next piece of Gemara together, because this line screams out for an explanation. Let's look further on that Gemara, Nochlin Testament Aleph. I don't know if you went further, but let's go to Nochlin Testament Aleph. Let's learn it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seventh line. Seventh line, Nochlin Testament Aleph. You have the Gemaras, right? So again, the Gemara is trying to figure out a case. The Gemara says, "Oh, the Gemara just said we did up to here last time. Isn't it difficult?" The Gemara said, "No, it's not difficult. That Chanoch should get it. Shouldn't have to pay the people who bought it, because he's like, I went straight from my grandfather." The Gemara said, "Okay, what about this case? Eli kasha ha kasha. See where I am? Seventh line. Ben bechor shemachar chelik bechor b'chai aviv. Reuven the bechor. He sold the double portion before Yaakov died. He sells his double portion before his father dies, and then he dies. Reuven dies before Yaakov, so he never gets the double portion. That's the case. Again, Reuven sold it to somebody, then Reuven dies, and Yaakov dies. So now what? You know, mostly kuchos. So the son, Reuven's son Chanoch, says, "You can take it from the kuchos." Similar idea that we just said before. But my father never had a right to sell it. The Gemara says, why? Avua mazvin iu mafik. His father sold it, and he's being mostly from the kuchos. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it's the same thing as we set up above. Is the kasha. What did we say before? No, he could say I'm coming straight from my grandfather. Hanoch could say I'm going straight from my grandfather Yaakov. But 1 second. Ask the Gemara, if he says I'm coming straight from my grandfather, then what's the problem? What's the problem? Somebody tell me. If Hanoch is coming straight from his grandfather Yaakov,
he doesn't get the Bechorah.
Then there's no Bechor. He's getting it. If he's skipping his father is the only reason he gets the double portion. If he's skipping his father, then how could he claim a double portion? He's trying to get a double portion. Beforehand, we said, okay, I'm going to get straight from my grandfather. But here, the only reason he will get a double portion is because of his father. So we can't say, oh, I'm going straight from my grandfather. So the Gemara says, this is a kasha. This is a davar kasha. This is a difficult to understand. Because if Chanoch says, I'm going straight from Yaakov, so then why should he get a double portion. He skipped his father, who was the Bechor. So the Gemara gives an amazing answer, and this is the secret of this other idea. This line screams out for explanation. Says the Gemara, what's the problem? What's the problem? Again, what's the problem with Chanoch saying, I'm going straight for my grandfather? What do you mean? How could he get the Bechor then? Says the Gemara, Umay Kushya, Dilma. This is what Chanoch could tell the people who bought it. Dilma Matzi Amar, Mikoach Avua Da'aba Kasina. I'm coming from my grandfather. Ubimakum Av Ka'amina. But I'm in the place of my father. I'm getting it from my grandfather, but I'm in the place of my father. What does that mean? Those are opposites, aren't they? Is he getting it from his father? Is he getting it from his grandfather? You're trying to have your cake and eat it too. I'm getting it from my grandfather, so my father couldn't have sold it. I'm getting it from my father because he gets a double portion. How do those two lines work together? The Gemara says it as if, yeah, he's getting it from his grandfather, but he's in place of his father. What does that mean?
Rabbi, could that be that it's kam tachtov, that he gets the bechor, that the grandson is getting it as a bechor in this from his grandfather, but he's in place of his father, such that the father's sale doesn't mean anything?
If he's really in the place of his father, I hear what you're trying to say, but if you're really in place of his father, then how could he say, oh, my father didn't have any rights to sell it? If he is his father, he should have to give it to the Lekuchos. The only reason we said before that the Lekuchos have no say is because we say, oh, the father didn't have any rights and we're skipping him. If he's a stand-in for his father, then his father sold it. He should have to live up to that sale. All right, so what exactly does this line mean? That he gets it from his grandfather, but he's in the place of his father. And so we have three questions that we're trying to, so we started off with the Rambam. How do we put the Rambam together? The Rambam gives off different impressions, but we just asked now three problems. If you really take the beginning of this Gemara literally, that he gets it from the grandfather, so then those two cases that I mentioned are problematic. The granddaughter should be like a son, but she shouldn't get anything. And the one son and 10 sons should get equally. Two problems. And then last, what does this line mean? So maybe there's a new idea how to look at Mishmush. This is said by the Imrei Moshe. I gave you an Imrei Moshe. I sent a picture of it. You can look at it after Shir, or look at it now as we go through it. Imrei Moshe is an Achron. He was in Brisk. Moshe Sokolovsky. Moshe Sokolovsky. He's it's used as his one sefer, the Imrei Moshe. This is a sefer. It's a very achronish, lumdish. Use it in the yeshivas. So the Imrei Moshe, and Rav Asher Weiss quotes this also in Pinchas. He says as follows: we have a different idea of mishmush. What did we think mishmush meant? Mishmush meant, let's say an uncle dies, and his nephews are going to get it. The uncle's brother, meaning the father, died already. So it's ke'ilu. What did we think up until now? Mishmush means ke'ilu. It goes through the dead man. Right? It goes from the uncle to his brother to the dead man. That's what mishmush means. That's what we thought. Like in our case, we're talking about brothers. How do brothers inherit? So one brother dies. The father already died before. So it's ke'ilu. It goes through the father, up to the father, and then down to the other brother. That's how we understood mishmush. And that is definitely one idea, one approach. I suggest the Imrei Moshe a different approach to mishmush. And the godless of this approach is that it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of mishmush and it's a little bit of direct. And that's why it's going to help us with the Rambam. There it is. When a person dies, Let's say a father dies. Yaakov dies. What does he leave to his children? He leaves to his children all his assets, but he also leaves to his children the schus to yarshin anyone who he in the future would yarshin. It's not that it just goes straight through the dead man when he dies. When the person dies, he at that moment is morish, gives the schus of future Yerusha that he is entitled to his sons. He is a trigger. So, on the one hand, it's going through him because he is the one that yarshin. Let's say when a brother's case, when a father dies, he gives to all of the sons. He gives to all of the sons, or all of his future sons. Oh, I see your question. Even all of his future sons. A person can give Yerusha. If a man dies before his son is born, the son still inherits. But the chiddush is when a man dies, when Yaakov dies, he gives Yerusha to all of his sons right then, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, but he also gives them the schus to yarshin anyone that he would yarshin in the first place. But what does that mean? He gives the schus that it should go directly from the other guy to the children. But he's the one that gives it. He gives that schus. So it's a little bit through him, but he allows it to be direct. So it's not just that, let's say, Yitzchak dies, Yaakov dies first, then Yitzchak. So Yitzchak stuff goes through Yaakov and then goes through to Reuven. No. When Yaakov dies before Yitzchak, Yaakov yarshins to his son all of his stuff, and any future Yerushas that he will get, he says, you have the schus to yarshin that. So on the one hand, it goes straight from Yitzchak to Reuven. That's what Yaakov does, basically. He gives them the schus to yarshin directly. But on the other hand, he's the one that gives that schus. So it also can be looked at as going through him. I sent you the words. I sent you a picture. You can look at it after, but that's what the Imrei Moshe says. The din mishmushu ha'av. It took me a few times after you read. You have to get it, but it's fascinating. Ha'av kishemeis b'chaye aviv oshar morishav. When someone dies from during the time of before his father dies, who morish zechus ha'Yerusha lebno. Moshe morish shar nechasim, heinu morish zechus ha'Yerusha. He gives his assets and he gives the rights to collect any future assets that he stands to yarshin. And therefore, it's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the middle. The father is the one that gives the rights, but once he gives the rights, it goes straight from the other morish to the Yorish. And that's how the Rambam could go both ways. On the one hand, he says it's direct. How can he say, though, that in the last Rambam that he gets a double portion? It's only direct because the father allowed it to be direct. So the father still played a role. It's not pure naturally direct. The mishmush is direct because the father kind of says, you have the schus to collect from my future morishim. And that's why, let's say, well, that's the exact lashon of the Gemara. What does the Gemara just say? I'm getting it from my grandfather, but I'm standing in the shoes of my father. Because it's my father that allowed this, the makom aviyah to take place. That's how the Gemara could say two opposite things. I'm getting it from my grandfather, but I'm in the place of my father. Yeah, because it's the place of your father that allowed you to get it directly from the grandfather. A little of both. And that's why the other kashas of the daughter, the granddaughter, no. It's 1 son and 10 sons. They're only considered jumping up a generation because their father, Ki'ilu, is more rich than that schus. And therefore, it's not pure mishmush, and it's not pure direct. Getting back to our case of the brothers, what's our topic? The brothers. It's not pure brother to brother. It's not pure brother, father, brother. The father was involved because when the father died, he gave each brother the right to yarshin each of their brothers directly. He was the trigger. And because he was the trigger, that's mishmush. And again, it also helps that you don't have to say something goes through a dead person. Nothing's going through a dead person. It's going straight from the person who dies to the people who are going to get it. But the trigger why that was allowed was because of the person who died. Questions? Everybody got it? Or I trust you, Rabbi. All right.
So what exactly? How did Tosfos? If we say it's like direct, but there's a little bit of the zechus, how exactly would the Gemara have the havamina that the brothers get before the father? Because it still involves the father.
Okay. Good question. Good question. Meaning, you're saying, is there any way to put this into the other approach? Meaning, if you say Yashir first directly, then for sure the brothers could go before the father, possibly. But if it's through this middle approach, so we still have to explain. We'll talk about it. Soon. Any other questions? No. Okay, so just 2 more points to the sugya. 2 or 3 more points. First of all, we did speak about hardcore. We did a little bit implicitly. So far, we have 3 approaches. We have Yashir, Mishmush, and this other kind of approach, which is somewhere in the middle. It's Mishmush, but it's Mishmush that was created Yashir directly. They're nafkaminas lahalacha, whether it's Mishmush or Yashir, whether it goes through the father or it goes directly from brother to brother. Are there halachic differences? We're speaking about lumdis and havaminas. Are there halachic differences? The 2. One of them is Kemat in the Gemara. If you want to look it up, it's summarized by brothers. The Gemara had it on Kufin test between grandfather and grandson. Let's say the father owes money. Right, Yaakov, you want to say that? Right? If the father owes money, and now brother to brother, that's an nafkamina. Who says it's nafkamina? Rabbi Kiva Eger on Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva Eger has Juvis, he has commentary Shulchan Aruch, but he also has Tosfos Rabbi Kiva Eger. I remember, I don't know enough Tosfos Rabbi Kiva Eger, which is on the side of the Mishnayos. I remember I took 2 classes with Dr. Chaim Soloveitchik in Bernard Revel Graduate School. That's the Rav's son. I took him for Rishonim. So he told us that the goblets of Rabbi Kiva Eger, you could really see it in his comments on Mishnayos. I don't have enough experience in seeing his goblets, but that's what I was always excited when you see a comment of Rabbi Kiva Eger on Mishnayos in the regular edition. So that's what he said the goblets is. But he says, often it's similar comments. We saw Rabbi Kiva Eger yesterday on Shulchan Aruch. He says basically the same idea here on Mishnah, but then he adds, there's an afkamina. Let's say the father owes, right, if there's property of the father that children get, that property is meshubit to loans that the father had to pay. What if Shimon dies and his stuff goes to Ruvain because his father already died, but his father had a lot of loans? Is that property meshubit to the loans of Ruvain? Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, that's an afkamina. If it goes through the father, really, then that property is Ki'ilu, it was the father's for some conceptual moment, and therefore, brother would have to pay with that. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, I'll read it to you. Yesh lomar nafkamina. Im haya avian bal chov. Im zeh bal yirash mikoch mishmush. Im bal chov gove baroi tzorach l'shalem chovo. If it's direct, then obviously not. If it's direct, then his father has nothing to do with it. Straight from brother to brother, the father's loans are not connected to the brother. One nafkamina. Yeah, Yaakov?
Actually, I was going to say it's like the reverse of, is there a Shina Yerushas?
Well, that's meaning Shina Yerushas for like Neva, like what we started off with.
No, one brother's chai for the other person, the other brother's loan. So if it goes to the father, it's probably on the machlokas if there's Yerushas. And if it goes directly, then there is no Yerushas.
Okay, meaning the loans, though, is only connected to the property of the one who took the loan. So if the father took the loan, so then if the father somehow conceptually ever gets that property going through him, then that would be connected to the loan too. But
If the brother had the loan, if the brother had the loan.
No, if the brother has the loan, so then for sure the other brother has to pay it because it originated with the brother's property.
If you were to say mishmush, then it goes via the father and machlokas, whether there's shin or rishus, from father to son.
Okay. Shini Rishus is only an issue by Geneva, whether you don't have to pay or not. If there's property that goes to 4 different people, but they're all like, that property is linked to the loan. One nafkamina. I saw another nafkamina. Let's mention these two. What happens if a person is muder hana'ah from their father? Somebody gets into a fight and says, "I'm never going to get any hana'ah from you, Dad." He's muder hana'ah from his father. They can't. Even after the father dies, I'm muder hana'ah from any of his stuff. Then the father dies, and then the guy's brother dies. So is the guy's brother's stuff also ne'asar to him? And if it went through the father, that it's mutar hana'ah from the father's stuff also, and it's included in the isser. It's directly from the brother, that it's not a problem, right? So the two nafkaminas about the chovos of the father. Didya and Zaka, you there? Right. Love to see you. Right. If it's mutar hana'ah directly from the father, or it's a loan from the father's balei chovos. Anyway, two nafkaminas. One final point of svara to mention. This gets back to Naphtali's issue. Think about biologically for a moment. Why is this such a sugya? We're talking about brothers for 2 days. What makes the brother relationship unique? So if you think about it biologically, the closest relations, obviously, what would you say? Blood, 1 generation. All right, mother, father, son, daughter. That's it. Those are the most direct in a certain sense. Son comes from parents, parents produce children. So on the one hand, those obviously are the closest, have to be first. But there might be a logic. Even if you say it goes through a father, is it possible to say that once a brother is produced, 2 brothers are models of each other, are carbon copies? The same source produced them. So on the one hand, yes, a parent is closer to a child, blood relative, than a brother is. Let's say Shimon is closer to Yaakov than Shimon is closer to Reuven, because Shimon came from Yaakov. But after Reuven is born, brothers have a certain connection that they don't even share with a brother and a parent, because they're carbon copies of each other. And they could fill in for each other. They have the same sources. They have the same DNA makeup, right? Because both parents, the same parents produced them. Or the same father produced them. So in a sense, of course, let's say mother, father, or son, daughter are the closest. But there is an idea, if you think about it. I was trying to think of a model. I couldn't put my finger on one. I'm still thinking that if you have a copy of something, that itself is like even closer than the sources. They could they're copies of each other, and that itself binds them even closer than anybody else. You think about it, even it's the same generation, right? There's certain generational connections that you have with your siblings than you have with your parents. Not just because of the humanness, but it's because you're the same. You grew up in the same. I'm just saying, even halachically and biologically, of the same ingredients, and therefore that might bind you in an even closer way. And this is even if you would say mishmush, even if it would go through the father. Still, once there's a reproducing of the two brothers, maybe they're the closest. And maybe that's how they could be even havamina, that the brother would go before the son of Chesma Beis. Right? The havamina of the brother before everybody. Because maybe once there's a carbon copy, you're a carbon copy. That's, is there anybody, let's say the extreme case, identical twins. Right? Is there any two people in the world that are closer than they are? Closer to each other or closer to their parents? Good question. Again, that applies to any siblings. So that's just something to think about. Now, on the one hand, that's why brothers are like this unique. They're connected through mishmush, but also they might be the closest, and that's why there might be havaminas in the Gemara that they might even be first. Yeah, Jonathan.
What would the Imre Moshe say about this? About these nafkaminas? It seems like, I would suggest maybe he's leaning more towards there's a unique relationship, and therefore, it does not really pass through the father. But he's kind of in the middle. So what does Rabbi think he would say?
Correct. I think he's somewhere in the middle. I would probably say that he would consider it yashir, meaning for these nafkaminas, meaning because the trigger happened when the father died, but it's the trigger that the father says, I now allow there to be direct Yerusha between these two other parties. So I would say that he would, nafkamina-wise, he would be the direct. I think it's a beautiful approach because it allows, number one, for the Rambam, you could have both ideas, and you don't have to make things so extreme. In terms of like, in Tosfos, we had a Havamina and Maskana, but maybe it's because of this issue, because it's a little of both. And you have to say something for that Gemara in Babasha Kufnan Tes. That Gemara screams out, I'm in place of my grandfather and I'm standing for my father. What does that mean? His approach is beautiful, but it's a little of both, and you can have both. He's in the place of his father and his grandfather. Okay, so we'll stop share here. I'm going to stay on now for a little while.